Hi, and welcome to the Concacast with Jon Arnold. I'm Jon Arnold. You might be wondering, really? Another podcast by a white guy? Yeah, but this one is about regional soccer y a veces voy a hablar en español. I realized I've been making a lot of things that I think people will like or trying to cater to the audience or the algorithm, and I hadn't really done something that was what I wanted to make. A weird bilingual show about regional soccer. Will the algorithm like that? Will you? I hope so. Bienvenidos. Let's dig in. Today's show will have 3 segments: the big story, the interview, and off the radar onto your radar. That's going to be a segment where I take something that's off the radar and put it onto your radar. But first, let's start with the big story. And of course, today we're going to talk about the Concacaf Champions Cup. You might have noticed my lapel pin, which Concacaf was kind enough to send to me. I don't think anyone, organizers, clubs, fans, thought that the Concacaf Champions Cup would start as poorly as it has for Liga MX teams. Now, of course, all 3 teams that failed to get results away from home this week, Tigres losing to Real Estelí in Managua, Chivas drawing in the last second with Cibao in the Dominican Republic, and Pumas losing to Cavalry in Canada, they can reverse those results in Mexico. But the fact that this is a league that has won every single tournament in the modern era except for one, it does bring up questions. I think there's a number of things at play here. And the first thing I would note is that while these teams are in season, and the excuse, I guess, if you want to put it like that, of not being in rhythm is really out the window, these are teams that are committed to other competitions, specifically the league. Chivas has to get into the Liguilla. Pumas have to get into the Liguilla. Everyone has to reach this upper level. And the other teams, Estelí, Cibao, and Cavalry, not taking anything away from their performances, they've really been focused only on this. That's important, but it shouldn't overcome the fact that when you talk about this competition, for so many years we've talked about depth. Liga MX clubs win it because of the depth. They have more good players down the roster than their MLS counterparts. And that's definitely true of teams in the Canadian Premier League, in the Dominican League, and in the Nicaraguan League. Especially when you start to dig into those rosters, there are players who aren't internationals for those countries, and yet they were still able to get results against the Mexican clubs. This might end up being a big nothing burger. It might end up being something we look back on and sort of laugh, for the real ones remember. Maybe famous results for the teams that got them, but nothing in the bigger macro narrative. But if one of these teams is able to get through the first round, it would absolutely be something that I think would send shockwaves through the region, and rightfully so. After all, these are clubs where the expectation is not to get out of the first round of the Concacaf Champions Cup, but to lift the trophy. That's why when a grande like Chivas gets a result like it did in the Dominican Republic, this guy who somehow got credentialed and was wearing a Chivas jersey and shorts was able to ask for the manager to resign, citing a quote from Jorge Vergara. That is the expectation at clubs like these, even if a fan shouldn't really be able to get into that space. 2 of these clubs are grandes. Tigres wants to be considered as a grande, and they certainly spend enough money to put themselves among the biggest spenders in the Americas, and yet unable to get results. We saw Club America lose to Real Estelí in Nicaragua last tournament. They were able to turn the result around and advance quite deep in the competition. Perhaps Tigres will do the same, but it undoubtedly is the big story this week that perhaps the hegemony of Liga MX is starting to change in this region, not just when it comes to MLS teams, but perhaps from teams in other countries as well. Now let's go to the interview where I talk to another manager who greatly understands the pressure of Liga MX. It's Gonzalo Pineda, the former Atlanta United manager, who I spoke with about taking the challenging job of Atlas, trying to win while also developing players there, and what he expects from his tenure in Guadalajara.
Well, yes, it's a new challenge, as you said, and I'm very hopeful to do a good job here. I feel like the club is completely in tune with my ideas, with the philosophy that I have, not just as a coach, but as a person. I mean, you probably know that Atlas is owned by Grupo Orlegui, which is the club that also owns a club in Spain and a club in Torreón, Santos Laguna. So the group is really, really in tune with my ideas, with my philosophy, with my values. They have this, slogan of winning serving. And for me, service is one of the main parts of the leadership that I have as a coach. So service towards my players and to be always helpful to everyone in the society and everything. So we are in line with that. And that is one of the main reasons why I took this job, is because I felt that connection. Then, of course, on the soccer side of it, Atlas is a club that is known by producing many players to Europe, to the national team, and I want to come back to that. I want to use the academies. I want to use all the young players that have talent and not hesitating to put them on the field and give them the opportunity. So I think that's one of the main things that I like about the club. And yes, of course, we're trying to build very fast a game model and the ideas and the tactics and everything. But more important than anything is trying to have good people, good human beings that can be together and be happy day by day. And that's one of the main things we are in that process right now.
You mentioned kind of reestablishing La Academia, right? That's what the club has been known for. There's so many of these great players who have, Rafa, Guardado. There's so many of these legends that have come through Atlas. But at the same time, you also know Liga MX in particular, although even if Orlegi says, hey, we're going to give you some time, it's also a results-based business, right?
Yes, I think that's a very good question. And it's a controversial topic always, because I believe in the talent. I believe in the young talent. And not just here, but in Atlanta. In Atlanta, Caleb Wiley is one of the players that we put on the field for the first time. And now he's owned by Chelsea. He's in Strasbourg in France playing for them. So if I see a young player that is better than the experienced player, the foreign player, I'm going to put it. I won't hesitate. My philosophy is always trying to put the best players to win every match. But at times, especially in Mexico, because of what you just said, results are like this, and you have to produce results as soon as possible. Coaches sometimes are hesitant to put young players, even though they think they're good. They say, yeah, but maybe in the biggest stage they won't produce the same, or this guy has more experience in that. And that's where I am a little bit different as a coach. I believe in what I see in trainers. I believe that you play as you train. And if I see a young player that is training very good, I'm going to put it. And I think in that way, we're going to produce results. But it's also caring about everyone, not just the young players, not just the foreign players, not just the experience. Everyone is important to us. We don't train starters, reserves. We train the team. Everyone knows the game plan for Sunday against Pumas. Everyone, by the end of the week, they should know the game plan. Everyone trained the game plan. Everyone lived the game plan, but no one knows who's going to play until 3 hours before the game. So in that way, you keep them grounded, you keep them on their toes, and they are always competing for a spot. So that's what I'm trying to do, especially because the roster is very balanced. The difference between starters and non-starters, I mean, what you can perceive as the best 11 for Atlas and the second best 11, you don't notice the difference. And that's one of the probably main difference that you have with MLS is here the rosters are way more balanced.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you what other differences you found maybe as you start to work in Mexico, and also ask, had this been, I don't know about a dream necessarily, but something that you've been thinking about for a while, coaching in Liga MX, what are some of the differences you've found, and how long had you been thinking about maybe taking this type of role?
Well, yes, there are many differences. And you said probably one of the main difference is the time you have as a coach. I mean, the expectations as a coach cannot be longer than 1 year because statistically, no one lasts that much in Atlanta, no, but in MLS is way longer than that. Actually, it's a kind of a shock when a coach is fired after 1 year. You say, what happened? Why? And in here is not the case. So I know that. So we have to train a little bit faster the game model, not as dynamic as you used to do in Atlanta. Kind of step by step, and you can really establish your foundation. And here you have to go for the main 3 things that you have to accomplish as a coach to be ready for the start of the season. The other thing is, of course, that the rosters are way more balanced. The level between player number 1 and 23 is not that different, and that is, for me, that brings a better quality in terms of training sessions, and that is something that I enjoy every day. And then what you said about my dream to be in Mexico, honestly, yes, I wanted to coach in Mexico, but not now. It wasn't in my plans. It was more what I said, the Grupo Orlegui, what I believe, what I feel as a coach. In 2 conversations we had, 4 hours on Zoom, we start to talk about values, about how you can help community, about how you can bring the best out of the players, how you need to care about the players and all that. And it was like a match. And that's what was very interesting to me. And I say, yes, I want to work there with Grupo Orlegui. So that's what happened, and why I'm here is mainly because of Grupo Orlegui.
I wanted to close by asking a bit about your ideas about the game. You know, I think whenever your manager takes a new job, there's always this contrast between, okay, this is a roster that you didn't probably have that much say in building. You got to get results with it. And then as you're there for a longer time, maybe like you said, in other leagues where the demands aren't as high, you can start to say, hey, bro, let's bring in this guy who plays like I want, or this guy. How do you kind of see that balance between, do you have this idea that you say, this is what my players must stick to, and I'm going to plug in the best pieces? Or do you say, oh, these are the players that I have, I want to play in a way that sort of helps this existing player, you know, do his best? Where do you kind of fall on that spectrum, if you even agree that there is a spectrum like that?
Yes, I think there's a spectrum there, but it's something that I discuss with many coaches. It's also a little bit of a lie. It's kind of something that we coaches, we lie a little bit about, because when you have your beliefs, your ideas as a coach, it doesn't matter the type of players you have, you're going to deliver the same type of football. Now, if I have 2 very good center backs, I'm going to play with a back 4. But if I have 3, maybe I play to a back 5. If I have 2 wingers, maybe I stick to a 4-3-3, and I put wingers there, like out wide, and they're going to go 1v1. I'm going to isolate them. If I have very good playmakers, maybe I play with the box in the middle. So it is a little bit of easy exit that you have as a coach. Oh, yeah, I don't have the type of players to produce my football, so I'm going to stick to 4-4-2, mid-block, tough to break, and then from there I'm going to try to counter because I don't have the pieces. No. For me, you always have the pieces. If you have your beliefs in your football, you have the pieces to play the way you want. You're going to have to match them, and maybe sometimes going to be 5-2-3, sometimes 4-4-2, sometimes 4-3-3. But you have the pieces always. In a first division team, you always have the pieces. So I'm trying to do that. The same way that I try to deliver a little bit there, you know, going with Brian and some type of player from the back, and some of those principles that I probably agreed with Brian to play with Seattle. And then the type of football that I had in Atlanta, always trying to play from the back, a good possession-based team, a good team that tries to attack constantly the opponent with some pace. And I'm going to stick to that in Atlas. It's just maybe the type of players I have here is different, so the formation will change, and the tactics in terms of when we play from the back, we're going to do this, when we build, when we are in the final third. But the style is going to remain always in my career, always trying to play from the back, always trying to be a good possession team, always trying to attack more than defending. That's my belief. The philosophy that I have, it matches the history of Atlas. We have this saying here, playing a lo Atlas, playing like Atlas. And that means always attacking. It doesn't matter if you are winning 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, you are losing 3-0. You are always looking forward. You're always looking to attack the opponent. Doesn't matter the score, the time. That's playing a lo Atlas, and that matches completely also my philosophy. So I couldn't find a better club to do this with a very good group that matches my values, and a club that matches the philosophy that I have as a coach.
Thanks again to Gonzalo Pineda for joining. If you haven't had a chance to check out the Substack Getting Concacaf, there's 2 articles that feature Gonzalo's perspective. One is about him specifically and the challenge he's taking on in Guadalajara with Atlas, and the other is about why there aren't more Mexican managers in Liga MX and abroad. You can check that out on the Substack. Getting Concacaf, getconcacaf.substack.com. Our final segment today, off your radar, onto your radar. I don't remember if that's what I called it earlier, but you get the idea of the segment. I wanted to talk today about Trinidad and Tobago, and if you're a loyal reader of the newsletter or an absolute soccer sicko, you might know that the Trinidad and Tobago senior men's national team is in Jamaica to play their counterparts in a pair of friendlies ahead of Gold Cup qualification in March. But I wanted to talk about the bigger picture right now in Trinidad and Tobago. Unfortunately, it doesn't look that pretty. Just before the new year, a state of exception was declared in an effort to crack down on gang violence and murders. Certain freedoms were suspended to give the government and the police force more power. It made me think about Trinidad and Tobago, what we know about it, the reason that some of these things are happening, the small-time gang violence that you see because of the proximity to many drug-producing countries and the fact that Trinidad and Tobago is between those countries and the United States, where illicit drugs are often bought and consumed in large quantities. Not exclusively, obviously, but the majority. And I thought about Trinidad and Tobago's history with violence and how football sometimes has been used to help give young men direction. We talk a lot about that. I think we love that idea, this idea that soccer is more than a game, that it can do things like end a civil war in Ivory Coast thanks to Didier Drogba, that it can give young people a path, a dream, a focus, and teach young people, young men especially, how to be good members of society, good teammates, treat the people around them with respect, and also give them something to look forward to. I wonder if Trinidad and Tobago is able to do that right now. We know that the Federation, the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association, was under FIFA control for a long time. Only in the last year has it returned to local control. I'm certainly not saying that if the Federation hadn't been dealing with bureaucracy in a different way, or if FIFA's normalization committee hadn't stepped in, that there wouldn't be a gang problem. But I do think that sometimes these stories we tell need to be put into action more often. Whether it's by FIFA, by the TTFA, or by people making a difference in their small community, something has to be done, and football can be a vehicle out, but too often we tell the stories, but we don't take the action. Back in 1991, Trinidad had a coup, a difficult situation, a violent situation, and one in which football did serve as a bridge between some of the people who held the beliefs that led to the attempt of a government overthrow and the people who didn't, who don't solve problems with violence, who were trying to make society better in other ways. And I think that can be a bit of a blueprint. What does this all mean? How do we put it all together? I'm just a guy in a goofy jacket trying to put this story on your radar, but I do want to encourage you that whether you're watching this in the US, in Trinidad and Tobago, or somewhere completely different, if you like these stories that we tell about the power of our game, maybe think about how you might be able to make a small one happen. You're probably not going to end a civil war. I'm definitely not. But we can probably make a difference in the lives of a kid or two who wants to learn the game and learn how to be a good person in the process. Trinidad and Tobago hopefully will be able to use sport and other resources to get society to a place where it feels safe for everyone, where kids are able to go on the street and play soccer and enjoy without having to worry about getting caught in the crossfire between small gangs trying to achieve their own means. For now, unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case, but when this story comes to a happy ending, let's hope that soccer plays a huge role, and let's hope that we can all do our part through our love of the game to make our societies better places as well. Bit of a heavy one today, maybe a bit rambling, but hopefully I took something that was off your radar and put it on. That'll about do it for the first Concacast with Jon Arnold. I've been Jon Arnold. That's it until next week, when we'll talk a little bit more about soccer in Central America and also dig into whatever the big stories are. Hope you join me then.